Welcome to Cityscope, a podcast where we discuss City of Salina projects, services, and initiatives in depth. I'm your host, David Hawksworth, and on today's program we have Debbie Pack, who's the Director of Finance and Administration. Debbie, welcome to the program.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Obviously, as someone who is in charge of the financial health of the city, what is the financial health of the city these days?
Well, David, right now the city's looking pretty good. We've had several years of increased fund balances. We're taking advantage of that right now, trying to spend down some of those funds on some larger projects. One is the fire station. We're looking at possibly funding some of that with cash as opposed to funding that with debt, which would save us thousands of dollars in interest. Some money towards the Smoky River improvements, things like that. So we're trying to look at our finances and make sure that we're using those finances appropriately and make sure that we're not, what people don't understand is that if you have a big fund balance, which the city does at this point, we were up to about $33 million a couple years ago. At the end of 25, that number looks like about $26 million. Our goal is $15 million. Although that goal is pretty low from a debt finance perspective. But, you know, obviously the raters like to see us with a large fund balance so that we can kind of get through the hard times because, as we know in city government, we never know when those are going to come.
Right.
So we want to make sure we have a good cushion when those do come and things start escalating, prices start escalating, as we saw through COVID and, you know, the few years after that. We're seeing those things kind of level off now. So we have a better idea of kind of what those annual costs are going to be. But we still have to make sure we have that cushion in there, so.
Right. And that worked to our advantage last year.
Sure.
When we had the log jam in the river.
Exactly.
And we had to unexpectedly spend quite a large amount of money to fix that.
Right. We were able to cover that out of cash, out of the general fund, because we did have that cushion. And like I said, we're able to look at some of the other bigger projects and determine, you know, through the city commission whether they want to use cash funding for some of those as opposed to debt financing some of those projects, or we never know what's going to happen. So, you know, if something does come up. So talking about that log jam, the 2025 numbers did come in a little bit different than what we expected them to. The revenues came in less than what we budgeted, about $2.5 million less than what we budgeted, and about $2 million less than 2024 even. So, and most of that was in sales tax and franchise fees, which are fees against utilities for using our right-of-way and things like that. But our expenses also came in more, and a lot of that, they came in about $500,000 over what we budgeted, and majority of that was for the log jam. Even though we anticipate maybe getting reimbursed for some of that money, it doesn't help us in 2025.
Right.
So until we get that, we'll put that money back in the general fund and kind of bring that balance back up a little bit. But yeah, that was about $1.2 million of that. So.
Okay. You mentioned debt financing earlier, and I think it's important for people to know exactly how that works. So we actually have a limit of how much we can borrow at any one specific point in time, and I don't think we're anywhere near that point.
No.
But
statute does specify, it's called a legal debt limit. It's typically, I think it's 30% of your assessed valuation, and we're at like 43% of that number. So we're significantly below, and most cities go that far, like that. But there are some that, you know, the smaller cities that get up on that number very quickly because they just don't have the assessed valuation. And we typically only finance projects that are long-term construction projects or, you know, that are going to last 20 or 30 years. We try to finance things for the amount of time that they're going to last. So if we're going to finance a new water plant or a new fire station, you know, we're going to try to finance that for the term that's going to last. Typically, we don't go over 20 years for any financing, and obviously those buildings will last. They probably will need some upgrading and things like that.
Sure.
But they'll look at that, and the more we can not debt finance, because that's one of those that the rating companies also, when we do debt financing, we have to be rated so that bondholders that are buying those bonds then kind of know what risk they're taking. And so one of the things the bondholders do, or the raters do look at, is how much debt we have out there. And so we have to be careful even though we have 63% more that we could finance, from a rating perspective, we really have to keep an eye on that and kind of make sure we're maintaining what we can do with the property tax that we have now, so.
So what is our bond rating and how does that compare to like the top of the top?
Our bond rating is AA3, and the ratings are very different depending on what company you have. We're probably third from the very top. And what we've seen historically is they're comparing us to cities that are much larger than us, have a much bigger base and things like that. Because that'll be some of the things that they'll say in our rating is you don't have the valuation base or, things like that. We've gotten really high praises on our fund balances, maintaining those fund balances and getting those up there. But there are just some things as a city of our size that we can't compare to other cities because that's what they're looking at too, is comparisons to other cities in the United States.
Right.
So.
Well, third from the top is pretty good.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, it's very good.
Okay.
And we've maintained that rating at least 8 years since I've been here, which is good.
Yeah, it's excellent.
Yeah.
I'm sure people have heard in city commission meetings, items of discussion and voting on industrial revenue bonds, which is quite different from just the general debt
Right.
financing that we do. And sometimes those numbers are really, really large for specific projects that other people are doing in the city.
Right.
So number one, why are we issuing those? And number two, how does that all work?
It really is an economic incentive for businesses to either come to our city or expand in our city or something like that. And what it allows, typically, there's a couple different ways industrial revenue bonds work is, first of all, the bonds are issued by the private entity. So the company that's doing the improvements issue the bond. There's no, we don't have any recourse for those bonds. There's none of the responsibilities
We
ours.
never have to pay it back.
No, we would never have to pay that back. And then there's two kind of benefits to them from an economics perspective is, the first one is sales tax exemption on materials for the building or the expansion that they're gonna do. And that one is more, it happens more often, that particular one. And the second one, or the bigger one, is these bigger projects like Schwann's or Cabot or, those types of projects that are in the $60 million range. Those are exemptions on property tax. But that's property tax that they're not currently paying. It's the property tax on the additional value of the property that they're expanding. So really, from a city's perspective, we're not losing tax, we're just not gaining it right away. And typically, it's 10 years. And then after the 10 years, that part of the property that they've expanded goes back on the tax roll, and that tax starts coming back to the city. I think people get really confused with that, like we're giving away tax dollars.
Right.
We're really just delaying those tax dollars for 10 years as a benefit to those companies to stay or expand here in the city of Salina.
And that's a very common thing
Yes.
throughout the state and probably the country too.
Yes, especially in Kansas, it's a huge benefit to, anybody that's going into any cities. Probably the larger cities more than the smaller cities, but it can be used anywhere for industrial purposes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, yeah, good to know, is that can be very confusing if you don't know the basic difference between
Right,
those. So.
right.
Okay, so we've talked about the financial health of the city. We have a budget in place for 2026, and it's way too early to tell how that's going to turn out, but
Right.
we're already thinking about 2027.
Absolutely.
And so, the budget process for us begins really this early in the year.
Yes, it does.
So kind of walk us through how that works.
Well, we start evaluating numbers. We look at them all year long, obviously. We're looking at how we're doing compared to our budget, how we're doing overall. We do that on a regular basis, but really, once we have our numbers for 2025, our actual numbers, we start doing a lot of analysis on revenues and things like that. What are the trends? Where are those numbers going? Personnel, things like that. Finance department does a lot of analysis on those kind of fixed sources of revenue and things like that, to try to determine, because basically the process of the budget is determine how much revenue you think you're going to have, and then budget your expenditures to that number, to balance your budget. It's not that easy because, we don't know. And since our revenues, like 30% of our general fund revenue comes from sales tax, which is very hard to determine what's going to happen.
Right.
That's people
It
spending.
depends so much on the economy.
The economy and, just what people are doing in general, and things like that. So it's really hard to try to figure out what those numbers were. But we just have to look at historical data. We just have to say, where have we been? What's that trend look like? The other big one for us is property tax. I don't know if you have or haven't read the news. The state legislator is always trying to, because that's a hard one for people to swallow, is that property tax, especially once you pay off your house and all you're doing is paying for taxes.
Right.
People don't really understand the impact that dollar has on the services that are provided for them. Property tax is probably about another third of what our general fund revenue is, which provides our police, our fire, our public works, our streets, all of the parks, all those functions have to be supported. And when those two revenue sources make up over 60% of your revenue, it's hard to kind of say we could do without them, and we try our best. That's why we try our best to make sure that we're being frugal and things like that. But so back to the process, we look at that revenue, and then what we try to do is, even beginning in January, we're asking our department heads to look at their capital spending, their replacement of equipment, things like that. Those are things that they can do early in the process. And then as we get some of the revenue estimates in and we get some of the personnel estimates, projected, we then go back to them and say, okay, now look at your operating expense, and here's what we kind of think we want you to stay at. If we believe that revenue will support an increase in expenditures, then we can say, okay, we'll give you an increase. If we can't, then they really have to take a hard look at, if I know my gasoline's going up, I'm gonna have to find that difference somewhere else.
Right.
And that's what we ask them to do. It's not easy for them because we don't have control over a lot of things. Right now, technology is crazy, so things are expanding and getting much more expensive in the technology world. So for like the technology department to say, oh, I have to pay all these maintenance agreements, and then where does that cost overrun come from if I'm not allowed to increase my budget? So we really have to work with each department individually to look at their circumstances and see what that is. So we'll go through that process with them and look at those numbers probably through May. And then in June, we'll start talking to City Commission. We'll go to City Commission and say, here's kind of what the numbers we have. Here's where we ended up. We'll give them a review of 25. We really don't have many numbers for 26 at this point, which is what
Right.
makes it so difficult, because you're never working in the
we're
present.
we're
still
thinking a
yeah,
year
we're-
ahead already,
We're
so.
still working 2 years behind, basically. So then we'll go to City Commission and say, these are our best estimates. This is what, the departments have asked for, and, if there's changes. Most of it's not new programming. Most of it is just cost inflation. And then, we'll walk through that with City Commission and let them make some decisions based on that, whether it's personnel increases or anything else that we're, fee increases or anything else, though. We'll work through that with them. June, July, we'll get our assessed valuations from the county in June. And I kind of talked about that property tax and how they're changing how that can be.
Right.
The current legislation, it used to be that the tax revenue neutral rate was you couldn't ask for any more property tax revenue than you had the prior year without having a public hearing, which was fine. And they set that rate based on your prior years and your current assessed. But this year, the new legislation they're looking at is allowing us a 3% increase in personal property tax, and there's still some amendments going around about what happens if you go over that 3%. Whether it's you have to go out to an election, there's a protest period, that's one of the options. We don't know yet because they're still
Right.
in session. So that's probably going to affect us and how we budget this year. And kind of determine what we are. From our perspective, we could live with either. It's just administratively how that would function. It'd be very difficult to try to hold an election during the process because it's such a short window.
Right.
And so, we just have to wait and see what they do.
Okay. Yeah, and it's just so many moving parts.
Right.
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 But I think the important thing for citizens to know is that, especially during the budget study sessions that the city commission has, that their public input is welcome at those meetings.
Sure, sure.
And, if you're not familiar with when the study sessions take place, they're usually Monday afternoons before the city commission meeting, which is the second and fourth Mondays of the month.
Right.
And usually those study sessions begin 2:00, 2:30, depending on how much they need to get through.
And there's a lot of information provided. So if you're really interested in how the city works, look at the information that we provide to the commission, because we're trying to give them all that information so that they can make those decisions. So hopefully it's enough for you to see kind of where things go and things like that, kind of where things are being spent and how things are, how we're determining these numbers and things like that.
Yeah, and all those documents are posted
Yep.
on the city website,
Absolutely.
usually the Thursday evening or Friday before the meeting.
Yes.
So that not only the commissioners can go through it, but citizens can go through it,
Correct.
ask questions, make suggestions, that
Yes.
kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then we do actually hold a public hearing before we adopt the budget in August. So that's also an opportunity to come forward and kind of give your information and give your, and you can always either email the city commissioners. Anybody with questions can call our office. I'm always willing to walk people through how does this work? And I'm happy to answer those questions for the public if they have questions about how something works as far as the budget is concerned. Because there's a lot.
Yeah,
There's a
there is.
lot.
Well, when the final budget document does come out after the city commission approves it, it's well over 100 pages.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a lot.
There's a lot of information in there, and if you think about it, there's a lot of services being provided for that, so it's just a lot. So, like I said, if people have questions, or if they have concerns, like I said, they can always email their city commissioners and ask those questions. They can email my office, they can call my office, like I said, I'd be glad to walk them through any numbers that they're seeing, so.
Okay. All right. So keep your eyes open for those documents and notices of meetings starting probably early June.
Yes.
For the city commission.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we'd kind of be remiss if we didn't talk about some other areas of your department too.
Sure.
Because not only, the finance is obviously a large part of the department, but the city clerk is actually under the finance department too.
Right.
So,
The city, our department actually has kind of three wings: accounting and finance, and then we have the city clerk, and then we also have water customer accounting, because they are a financial collector of bills for the city. The accounting side of it, financial, besides the budget, we also do the city's audit, which is a huge project for us.
Right.
Pay the bills and things like that. The city clerk's office really does more than anybody can. They're like the controller of everything that goes in and out of the, especially correspondence and things like that. Of course, our city clerk runs the city commission meetings. They do licensing. They just do a lot of things for the city as far as the internal workings of where things are and communications and things like that. So they're a vital role in the city and how it works.
and that's a department of two whole people.
Yes, yes. Two whole people. Yes, they do a lot of stuff for them, for us.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and they
yeah.
handle all the open records requests too.
Right,
So.
they handle open records requests, they do all of the boards and commissions assignments, and when people apply for those, they manage all of that, getting them to the city commission to make their decisions on who to appoint. They track all of they don't have to necessarily be involved in the meetings as far as agendas and things like that, but they are certainly responsible for collecting all of that and making sure that we have that on file for people when they want to do it. And they are in charge of the entire city commission agenda, so that from start to finish, collecting all the documents and putting it all together and making sure everybody gets what they need. So, they're busy doing that every other week.
Yeah,
So-
and all of that stuff they maintain online
Yes,
too.
yes.
So if you, for some reason, wanted to go back and look at a city commission agenda from 1998, for example, it's there on the website.
Yep.
City clerk maintains that, and,
Yes, she does that. The minutes, the agendas, all of the resolutions and ordinances that have ever been passed by the city commission, all of that is maintained by the city clerk's
yep,
office.
all the way back to ordinance
When-
number 1.
That's right.
In 1870, I think, 1870.
That's right. And, you kind of mentioned records requests. We have records policies that we're required to keep certain documents a long time. That's another one of their kind of jobs, is to kind of make sure we're maintaining our records retention, to make sure that we do have things that we're supposed to have when we need them. So,
Okay.
in fact, somebody came in yesterday and they were going to the laserfish or the microfish to look
Oh,
something
right,
up, and I'm like,
right.
oh, no. Yeah,
But it's there.
it's there, so.
All right, very good. And then you mentioned water customer accounting, too.
Yep, water customer accounting does all the billing and collections for the water, trash, and recycling center. So they process all those bills, we obviously have meter readers that are automatic, but they have to process all of that and make sure there's not errors, and those happen. We apologize for that, but, it is all.
20,000 some.
Yeah, over 20,000 accounts, and you have a camera up there reading, a meter. Things are gonna happen, but we try to fix those and catch them as soon as we can. We try to catch them before they go out, but obviously
Right.
sometimes they do go out. And if something happens, that they're responsible for trying to figure out why and fixing it, so.
Okay.
And dealing with people and how, paying their water bills and things like that.
Yeah,
so.
my office is right across from water customer accounting, and the amount of people that are in and out of there all day is amazing.
Yep, yeah, very busy.
Yep. And I'm working on a project for them now with converting the old start, stop, and move service forms to a new forms.
Right,
So,
right.
so that'll be an exciting thing when that gets all the bugs get worked out of that.
Yeah, it's electronic, but there always are, every time you change something internally, it can affect what's happening,
Sure.
and that's kind of what's happened with them. They had some good forms that were working, and then all of a sudden something happens and they're not working as well as they should. And so we're always looking to make things better, make things more accessible for people, especially online. This day and age, everyone wants to be online.
Right.
But we also have to be aware of that some people don't want to be online. So we try to work toward whatever people are most comfortable with. But online definitely takes a lot to keep it up.
Right. Right. Yeah, and we went through a transition a couple of years ago to a brand-new system. And,
Right.
And got off to maybe a little rocky start, but it's
Yeah.
working pretty well now.
Yeah, I think we've gotten most of the bugs worked out of it, but for the most part. But like you said, it's always a challenge when you're working with electronics and computers and things like that are doing all those things in the background, and you have
Right.
to figure out, what did it do this day?
Right.
Where did it go?
Yep,
So,
People
but they're really good down there. They know their stuff, and they know how to look in the system and work things out and figure out where things went wrong. I mean, there's a lot of things, and I think one thing about water customer accounting that people don't realize is there's an opportunity for people to go online and track their water usage.
Right.
You can go online and sign up for notices, and if you have a toilet running that's using more water than it should, you'll know within a day. I've had it happen to me. I left a hose running or something like that. Saves you a lot, but I think that's probably one thing that not enough people take advantage of. But so that's one of those, improvements that we made with that new system, is that notification part that people can take advantage of.
And if someone wants more information, there is a YouTube video that shows exactly how it works. Marissa
Right.
Foster, who's kind of heading up the water customer accounting,
Right.
helped make a video about that.
Yeah, and on their website, there's a lot of good information.
Right.
They're really good about getting that information out,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Yep.
So, okay. Did we miss anything in your department?
I don't know, we talked about a lot. I didn't even talk any numbers really, so that's pretty good.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah. Come to
yeah.
budget meetings, you'll get as much as you want.
That's right.
Be overwhelmed with that.
Yep, yep.
So-
Well, but that's good. That's your department does a great job of keeping track of all of that and making sure that the city commissioners have the information they need to make the best decisions for the city.
Exactly, and that's my opinion, is that's our job. Our job is to provide the information for them to make good decisions. so that they're comfortable with the decisions they're making, to provide them with good information and good data, to be able to do that for the best, for the citizens especially. So,
Right.
so citizens can also know that we have this information and we're making these plans, and we really are trying to do the best thing we can,
Right.
so.
Okay. All right. Well, Debbie, thanks for being on the program today. I hope our viewers and listeners have learned a lot about the finances of the city, and
It's not always the most exciting, but,
Right,
it is what it is.
But if they do have any questions,
Right, absolutely.
they can contact you at the city, and
Absolutely.
okay,
We'd be glad to talk to anybody that needs information.
okay. All right, Debbie, thanks very much,
Okay, thank you.
and thank you for watching Cityscope. We'll see you next month.